This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. Hey, one of our favorite regulars on this podcast, you've heard his material, you've heard an interview or two. He is not only one of my best friends in the business, but one of the most successful and cleanest. I always put that in there. I don't know why. He's just plain funny, but he does corporates and stage gigs and television and dry bar comedy. He's done it all. And we're here to kind of catch you, the audience, up on what life is like on the road from my good friend, Steve Bruner.
Whoa, wow. Let's hope tonight's show has that reaction, Scott. I appreciate that.
We should catch the audience up. You just finished driving to a corporate gig, but you have a little time until the sound check.
Yeah. Yep.
So you have a big show tonight. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to chat is that you and I have known each other a long time, and we're both. You're a lot.
According to your intro, best friends in the biz.
But I was going to make the point. I'm older than you, but you're not a teenager.
That's why we're friends. That's why we're friends, Scott. It's good to keep people who are older than me around. It gives me hope.
Well, thank you. It's good. Sure. My life has purpose. But my point is that you're not a teenager anymore, and you were starting to kind of pull back on the road work, but the last couple of years you've had some changes in your life, and you are working so much. I see on social media you're doing gigs all around Northern California. You're doing corporate shows, some more recordings. I mean, it's incredible how busy you are. So how's life on the road?
Well, it has changed, and it's not as first of all, yes, life has changed for anyone out there. There's two boys in my wife and my life that had limited opportunities, and we had room and patience, and we're trying. So that's the bottom line of that. And I am not well. I'm glad the social media stuff is running. I'll have to tell my fabulous person that runs that, Paula. It looks like I am doing very well. I have just changed to not be on the things that take me away for as long. So I'm doing one-nighters and a couple 2-3-nighters that I can fly to and returning home, because in this situation with the boys, it's more important to be present a little bit more when I am at home. So while I'm just as busy, there are gigs that I could drive to or fly to one-nighters, as opposed to, as you know, the cruises or the corporates that were in different countries, or which there weren't all that many.
And exactly. And what I was referencing was that you, in previous interviews and comedy spots on this podcast, were sharing material about cruising, because being so clean and being so funny, you were one of the guys that regularly for years made a good living in the cruise industry, doing shows for cruise lines all over the country and the world. And with the advent of new parenting, and we should tell the audience.
Parenting 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. You and your wife already raised a set of kids, and now you have a new set. And
it was easier when I was younger. I'll tell you that. I've never been so tired. I tell everybody listening this: invest in coffee, because I'm using more than my share.
Well, it is interesting because as a stand-up comic, as your life goes, your gigs tend to adjust to your life. So when you're single, you're out doing anything and everything, and you're just having fun and making a living. Well, then you get married, and then there's some adjustments to balancing a bride and your comedic life, yet you have even more responsibility to make a living. Then children come along, and that's another adjustment because you want to be a part of their lives. Then you get to the point of close to retirement, and boom, you're a parent again. That has puts you out there, as you said, on more shows. And you're doing everything from local restaurants and comedy clubs to a lot of corporates. Congratulations.
Yeah, I wasn't a big believer in the sense that everybody says, but the phrase keeps coming back to me when a door closes, a window opens, or whatever, and I just put myself available to different things, and they came. It's not like I'm done with cruises. I do just far less. Want to keep my foot in that door just because they're, well, one, lucrative, and two, I'm not terrible at them yet. And the people that go on the cruises that I'm going are still look at me as the young hip guy, which is an unusual circumstance for me because although I've done a couple comedy clubs too, it's crazy how you just kind of say, hey, what's out there? I don't turn a lot down on the idea. If I have the date open and I'm available and there's not like today, I'm missing open house because open house came up and I had already had this gig booked like 2 months ago.
But that happens to every parent that you can't make 100% of things because life happens. But I know that it has changed for example, the distance you'll travel and the number of nights you'll be away. And before we get into,
well, real quick, my wife said, how far away is Teresa, the fabulous Teresa, that some people hear about in my act? She goes, how far is that gig? I go, Australia, honey. It's Australia. I'm going to a one-nighter in Australia. It's going to take me 14 days, including the loss. And we have an open joke of, we should just go to Arizona. We should just go and the kids will be fine for a weekend. We'll go to Arizona. So every gig I have I tell her is some real far away, but this is great. I'm in Walnut Creek. As you know, I live in Northern California, the heart of wine country in Santa Rosa. This is a 2-hour drive because it was a horrible accident today, but I leave 3 hours early and get to do this before the sound check, like you say. So yeah, if I can be home the same night and be there to take the boys to school, I didn't have that advantage when I was raising my own kids. It was every gig I could possibly take to feed and clothe and house. We're in a different situation. I don't need as much, but I also don't want to end up being 75 and needing a lot more. So we're still kind of padding the coffers, and I still have some material. I'm sure you're leading up to it. Haven't really introduced the boys into the set. I think that's going to be I don't know how they feel about that. And
before we get to that, Steve,
okay, all right.
You are working some comedy clubs. You're doing some restaurants and some wineries, and you're still doing corporates. Before we get to your material and how life has changed, how has it been out on the road with all these variety of audiences? Now, I happen to know, and I've used you in a couple fundraisers. You're incredibly clean, incredibly funny. So I think you work in every crowd. But for the sake of the podcast audience, what's it like out there as a 60-year-old versus when you were 30?
Well, it's definitely different. Comedy has changed. I just read, I think, that there's 3 times more people who, I don't know if they say identify as comedians than there were 5 years ago, which all means that there's 8 billion than there was. I think there were only 2 billion, 2.5 billion or whatever. So they're definitely different. I definitely am playing to different crowds, and different crowds come to see comedy because there's so much on television, and also they expect to see. I've been chatted at more in the past year. It seems like there's actually we're in 2024 in case people dig this up out of a time capsule in 2500 or something. We're in 2024, and there's a big thing where the audiences actually chat with the person on stage. More so than
they got the idea it was okay.
Yeah. Well, there was always heckling, which seemed to be something that was unbidden and unwelcome in certain situations. But now it seems that you turn on every YouTube channel and every Netflix special that's in a smaller event, and people are asking questions. The audience is asking questions of the comic. The comic is it used to be crowd work that you would do when you didn't have the material.
I was going to say that
but
crowd
now
work used to be a crutch for those that didn't have.
Well, there were
material.
some that it was part of their act. It was some that it was a necessary. What do you do? Where are you from? Now it's no holds barred, and I am not that kind of. If you recall me looking, I'm 165 pounds and 5'9", certainly not intimidating in any way, shape, or form. And when somebody doesn't like something and they verbalize it, it's an interesting change that I've had to sort of adapt to. But gosh, Scott, since we were working, we also went through COVID, and I did 117 shows on Zoom, and that was a totally different animal. And the truth is in a joke that I say back when it was popular, but they didn't know how to run Zoom, and I did 117 shows, and 3 of those shows, my comedy section was entirely on mute because they couldn't figure out. And I mean, 3 shows. And of course they're calling me saying, "Hey, we can't hear you. What's it?" And I'm not in charge of the sound or whatever. And my phone's across the room, and a couple people emailed and said, "Oh, that's the funniest you've ever been." That was the bad part about that. But and also there were a couple people back early Zoom, if you remember, that you could have a free. If you pay $15 a month, you can have up to, a 9-hour Zoom meeting or something like that. But if you don't pay, you have 47 minutes or some absurd number. And I was on a dozen shows, easily a dozen shows, where they got the free Zoom. They could put 50 people in. They gave away their little awards. And by the time the comic came, there was like 8 minutes left when they had set up for a 25-minute comedy bit or whatever. There were all kinds of craziness in the beginning. So my point is, at first I had to learn how to maybe get funny. I thought I was funny, but it took a while for me to find audiences that thought so, or bookers certainly. And then that started to work with what I did, my little observational skits and sketches, as they say. And then you went from clubs to corporate to colleges to comedy rooms to cruises and
You've
whatever
done
else
TV.
there were. Oh yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I have done so many shows that are off the air. It would make its own channel. I think there was one year where I was the last comic on 3 different TV shows.
No.
It was like, I was the last one on Rick D's Into the Night. I was the last one on, I think, Bob Euchre's Wacky World of Sports. And I think there was another one. But it was like, book Steve Bruner when you hear the end is near.
You're going to go down in history as the comic for jumping the shark.
Exactly.
Show business people know that reference.
Sure, absolutely. From Happy Days.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, by the way, I did want to encapsulate everything you just said over the last 5 minutes. That in comedy, especially business-wise, you have to adapt or die. And so as you've grown as a professional entertainer, you went, as you said, from the comedy clubs to the corporate, and then COVID came along. Well, now as and I want to be as respectful as possible, but let's say a senior citizen of entertainment, you have to also adapt, because I think there's a reason I'm bringing this up, Steve, is there's a reference to a lot of the guys that I talk to and interview that are in our age group. They're only performing to senior centers and communities that cater to that age group.
There's plenty of those. There's plenty of those. Yeah.
But you are getting those on top of working regular rooms where you're getting the 20 and 30-year-olds. So there's got to be some adjustment to material, or am I totally wrong? There's no adjustment.
Oh, I'm sure there is some. If I listen, I have kind of a lot now. I have, the ship still asks for an hour and a half, two 45-minute shows. the lines that I'm choosing to work are a little cleaner, so I don't have to come up with a blue show, which I never had anyway. It was lousy. I think I got to say tits was the dirtiest I've ever been. And that's just how
I want
it
to
works
apologize for my audience.
Yeah,
I didn't
cover
bleep
those
that.
ears. I know. And so when somebody asks me this that isn't as good a friend, I give them the response. I think the truth is I'm a lazy writer. And by that, I mean, I write every single day, but I don't want to rewrite something for a different audience. So I write something, and if they laugh at it when they're 20, they laugh at it when they're 50 or 75 or 175 if we get lucky to be that long with our mechanical brains. So I don't want to write something that only works on cruises or only works on colleges. I may set it up slightly different when I see that everybody's at 20s and 30s. I'm like, well, first of all, I'm married. I don't know if any of you got into that racket, but
great intro.
Something like that. Or when I'm like, and I'm lucky enough to love my wife and to have material that she plays a prominent role in. It's not exactly her, but it's the her that we laugh about when she does something. And so I bring that into the audience of 20-year-olds that aren't married and the people that are on the cruise ship that, I've played single cruises. I've played cruises where they're not husband and wife oriented if gay. And it's a different animal, but I dance with who brung me. I'm the only, I don't want to rewrite my show. Now, if it's a corporate event, there's a wee bit difference in that. I ask sometimes
Steve,
there's specialization. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you get into corporate, because that is a different beast, I want to, again, bring everything you said down to what I think is a truism, which is funny is funny. So,
I think so. For me, it is. And if you have an attitude, maybe it's different. But what you see is what you get with me. I'm not bringing up. I'm about as edgy as a bowling ball. I'm not going to make everybody angry, and I try to hit a wide swath. Some people love that, some people don't. But it's how I write. I don't have choices. I can't write some pithy thing about politics and then have something that I'm a firm right on this show and a firm left on this show. Nah, and there are some guys that can do that.
That's
I remember
a lot of
working
work,
with
like you said.
Well, their brain thinks differently than mine. I remember a great friend of mine, and I won't mention his name. When he went into Oregon, he talked about an endangered species in one realm, and he said it as revered. Why are these people worried about this? Why can't you get more than a second grade education? Quit logging the area that this bird is in or whatever. And then he'd go to the logging camp and he'd say, today I had a spotted owl sandwich, I mean, and it was a genius move, but I was like, I didn't know. I was a good friend of his. I didn't know where he sat on it. And I didn't want to, I kind of want my thoughts to be my thoughts. And like I say, I don't have really deep.
Well,
I'm lucky,
but I was going to say
think really deeply about it.
That's made you so successful. And even though you didn't get the fame and fortune of Jerry Seinfeld or Jay Leno, I could name those two guys.
Who?
Yeah,
who
I
are
know.
those guys?
But those are two guys.
I'd trade pocketbooks with them. I would trade pocketbooks with them.
Yeah, exactly. They're still working, and they don't compromise their comedy for the audience.
Oh, good.
They do what they do because funny is funny and it works, and you're doing the same thing. So, Steve, that being said, when you go into a corporate gig, you do modify or do something to bring the corporate audience into your material, right?
Oh, it depends on the corporate. If they ask for specification, which pays a little bit more because it takes a lot more energy and effort, you don't get to practice on if you're doing a tool and die company and you come up with some tool and die material, you don't get to really work it out at the comedy club. You just sort of get together with a couple friends and I say, hey, here's what I know about tool and die. Here's what I know about this company. Here are the 5 bits that I have. Here's what they've given me on the president. They want me to semi-roast him because he's retiring. Here's his, his dog, eats better than most families of four. Is this not offensive? So I run it by a couple guys. Some of them, most of them, Stan and Jim and all that kind of stuff. Jim Farrell, Stan Sellers, for those of you who want to look up the talented friends that say they're in my world. And yeah, they sort of tool it a little bit. I only come up with 10 jokes because that's as hard as I want to work on a piece that I'm only going to do one time. I really want timeless material that will work, and I don't like coming up with.
Well,
I've never been a topical guy much either, because those jokes are in the newspaper for 1 week and then they're gone. That is an incredible amount of energy on something short. It's funny. I mean, it keeps guys at late night totally alive, and I value it, but it's just not my strength.
Your cup of tea. Well, I broke out my protractor, and I figured out that what you're saying is if you're getting a corporate gig for 45 minutes, you're going to stick to your 35 minutes of material that works, but you're willing to write an additional 5 to 10 minutes to engage a specific audience when which is necessity for corporate that you wouldn't do in any other gig.
Well, now and again, I can bastardize a joke that if the CEO that's retiring or the secretary that's retiring goes skydiving, I can actually bring in my parachute material into that piece and sort of sideways and do an end run around the piece, and then I look brilliant.
Yeah, well, that's what's so funny about it is, I just go to my back pocket.
I look brilliant?
And I have, I got my parachute material, and then over here I've got my
my wood dog
material.
Yeah, or if they collect cats, I have some, I have dog, cat, man, woman, golf, bocce ball. I there's a lot of things that if I think it's funny, I write it down and I do it, and then it works, whether it's from the cavalry run or to a dart tournament. It doesn't matter. I'm ready.
And for the podcast audience, what the genius of that is that a true professional like you has this mental Rolodex. For those that know what a Rolodex is, where when a subject comes up, you can relate it to material that you've been doing for years, and they feel like you just created it for them, the audience, and yet you've had it, but the topic happened to come up. And I think you're right. It makes you look like a genius, and in a sense you are, because you're able to hold that material, and something you might have written 15 years ago works in this situation, as we said.
And they've never heard it.
Right.
And they've never heard it.
And funny is funny, and it works. So the other thing that we alluded to earlier that I wanted to get back to is that you've had some...
Oh, well, before that,
yes.
I'm not a genius, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So there you go.
There's so many definitions of the word smart.
Yeah.
So we were talking about you've had some dramatic or dynamic, I don't know the best word.
Oh, I like dynamic. Oh, that's good. I'm writing that down, Scott.
Dynamic changes
not
in
dramatic.
Your life.
Yeah.
with the reparenting of 2 teenage boys. And I was curious, you were saying, you've already said it didn't work itself into your material, but your regular material about being married and being this age and doing comedy, has that affected your material, your writing so far? Is there any new bits you could share?
Well, I did. There's 2 things on that. I did come up with a couple bits for the people when I play my hometown, because there's a great barrel-proof lounge comedy club in my hometown that I play often, and I have a mail list. I grew up there, so a lot of people come to see shows that are even on a Sunday afternoon. And they know about the situation change of our lives. And I have said things like, you guys are so great. There's two two boys in our lives now, and all the people that are my friends say, God, your heart is so open. That's so wonderful. And all my professional comedian friends say the lengths you will go to get material. So
really?
those are honestly the two. They are you know exactly who your comedy friend is and who your high school buddy is, family friend is. Between those are the things that they say, and they said it so much that I wrote it down because I was just like, you are the 27th person to go, my God, Bruner, you know. But yeah, Teresa, you know, every time I go somewhere for an extended period of time, 2 or 3, 4 days, I try to get her something. I got her on this last trip to Arizona. I got her a candle, and the candle. I don't know, Scott. We're so overprotective of political correctness now that they're giving candles with directions.
What?
And yeah, candles have directions. And personally, I think if you are so dumb that you don't know how to operate a candle, I don't want you to have matches. That's just my, and they really do have directions. They really have, the directions are actually very funny. I'm so glad I found them. They're on the bottom. I don't know who. We've had candles like 10 days shorter than we've had fire, but still they say, the first direction is do not stand by a naked flame. I think they mean do not stand by flame naked. That's just that would be a better direction.
Yes.
But
yes.
the other one, but the other one is, do not leave candle unattended. But I think they mean do not leave lit candle unattended, because otherwise you've bought a wax pet. and you're like, anytime you want to take your wife to the movies or something, you got to call up your sister and, hey, do you mind looking after the candle? It doesn't like being left unattended.
It kind of reminds me of the old pet rock thing, is that, I've got this special candle at home. I don't want to leave it unattended.
Oh, a pet candle. Hey, let me say, you should patent that. That might be the thing. And I think candles are hilarious anyway. My wife loves them. She burns them or whatever. They're so much better than potpourri, in my opinion. Candles are kind of man potpourri. They've got flame, and you know, it's like, oh, this is great. Whereas giving a candle or giving potpourri, giving anything, even perfume, it's like, you know, listen, I want the air around you to smell better. Here's a gift. It just doesn't seem like the kind.
No, it's kind of
romantic,
insulting, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems insulting. So those I've always been, but she likes them, so I keep giving them to her. So
that's funny.
That's where.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a couple new bits by Steve Bruner.
Yay! Thank you, Scott, for the time. It's always great. Keep up the good hard work with the podcast. Bob Ettinger says hello. I spoke with him, told him I was checking in with you, and he said to say hello. A lot of people like you. Keep up the good work.
I certainly will, and thank you for passing on those kind messages. Steve,
Absolutely.
You keep doing a great job, and good luck. My best to Teresa, and continued prayers for everything you're going through with the boys. I know you've really made a difference in their lives, and to share some of the Steve Bruner funny, I do have some material to share. So podcast audience, stay tuned. We're going to have a couple minutes of Bruner comedy. But for my good friend Steve, thanks for taking the time before your corporate tonight and coming on the podcast.
My pleasure, Scott. Talk to you sooner than later, and hope to see you as well. Take care, bud.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a little stand-up comedy by Steve Bruner.
What kind of comedy do you do? And I think the nature of mine is observational. That would be the big picture. But I like to say with a side of smart aleck. Everybody has a different definition, so I'm going to tell you what mine is. Say you worked in a puzzle factory. It could happen. You work in a puzzle factory and you put an extra piece in. You guys know? You're a smart aleck. If you take a piece out, you're a jerk. And I want to thank you for the Standing ovation's kind of rare. Standing ovation's kind of rare. At the beginning of the show, a rare child indeed. That is really amazing. So I am just going to tell you, I'm going to work very hard to live up, because I do not want the intro to be the highlight. That would be that. Nobody here is going to have that conversation tomorrow. How was the comedy show? Oh, we loved him. Oh, at first. And I gotta say how nice they've treated me here. I have Provost fabulous. The people that run this thing, Thad put me in a nice hotel. I love that, because I've stayed in a ton of hotels, people. Every hotel you ever walk into always has a slogan, something to the effect of just like home, which I don't believe. I've never been in anybody's house where they bolt the TV to the dresser. What is that? I stayed in one hotel where they bolted the remote control down, and it wasn't facing the TV. That's a smart aleck. My only entertainment all week long was upsetting the guy in the next room. Oh, bet you want to see the end of that, didn't you? Oh, yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning, CNN, really, really loud, just for you. If I can't get to sleep, nobody can get to sleep. Every hotel's always the same. It's always the same. You people that don't stay in hotels, trust me, every single time they always ask you the same questions right up front. The first question, how are you going to pay? There are four options only. First option is cash. Second, check, charge, other. I don't know what that is. But that has never stopped me from circling it. Now I just slide it over. And I've done about 50 times. Just slide it, just wait. I just wait like I just lit a fuse or something, and they just look at it, and then look at me, and look at that. What does that mean? I said, oh, I don't know. I was hoping you could tell me. You put it down. It was an option. All I did was circle it. So my thinking is maybe you could send my bill to some other guy. Next question, always ask, how many keys? After how are you going to pay? They always say, how many keys? And I'll be honest with you people. I'm always flying. I take a red eye as late as possible. It's me. I look like I've been traveling all day. And I just say 1 key. Every single time, the person behind the desk is a little disappointed. Like they want to think something about the stranger social life that travels through their town. 1 key is all I say, except when I was in Las Vegas. You know Las Vegas, people. That's whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Kind of sleazy. And I'm playing a place like the Hard Rock or whatever, kind of the center of sin in Sin City. And the guy says his little thing. He goes, how many keys? But wait, look around. You know where you are? This is adult fantasy land, buddy. Anything you think of, we can make happen. How many keys? How many keys? How many keys? How many keys? I'm thinking, let's give him a story. Give me 38. I'm just going to leave him from here to the Luxor in case I get lost. They're like breadcrumbs.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.